every so often and have tea and cake. So I'm sorry about that this afternoon, but at least you haven't had to go out in the rain and the wind. We like to talk to you every so often to find out what your opinions are and how you're getting on, and if you have any suggestions for how we can make things better for you. So I'm going to hand you over now to Janice Minter, who will tell you what the subject is today, but I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll give us lots of ideas and opinions. Thank you for coming.
Hello, Janice.
Have we lost them?
Are you muted, Janice, or are you lost?
I noticed Estelle has started the recording. Has that caused a problem?
Can you see Janice?
Hello, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Apologies there. Hello there. I know a lot of you do know me, but for those of you who don't, I have the privilege of being the head of nursing for cancer surgery and major trauma here at St George's Hospital. We really do value you giving up your time to join our event today so that we can hear about some of the experiences people have been having, and also it helps us develop our services going forwards. This is our first time of doing a listening event via Teams. Please bear with us. I say, we'll also bear with you, because it's a very new world for us, and obviously having so many people joining us is great. We're just trying to navigate the system. And the other challenge we have here is our Wi-Fi connection at St George's isn't always quite where we want it to be. So if you do lose us, just bear with us, because we will come back. It will just be the case that we've frozen for a period of time. Fingers crossed we don't, but if we do, just hold tight, because we'll come back. Okay. So today, the purpose of our listening event is to sort of learn and grow as an organisation by taking on board your feedback. You're in a unique position to tell us what's been working well and where we can also make improvements. This is going to help me and us as Cancer Services develop our services for the future. As you're all aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has thrown up many new challenges for the NHS. Firstly, I think it's important to acknowledge there's been some dramatic changes needed in outpatient services due to COVID, and they have presented us a number of issues as an organisation relating to communication, some of it around text alerts, etc. There is ongoing work within the organisation to help improve this, because we are aware of some of these issues around people not knowing whether to come in, whether they're getting the right texts, etc. But the purpose of this event, as much as possible, I want to focus on the actual appointments and how the communication has been for you, having consultations over the phone. Has it met your needs? Have staff feel comfortable in talking to you? Things like that is really where I want to sort of hone in on, so that we can develop our learning and our experience, and also think about whether we can do things to support staff with education, etc., going forwards. Unfortunately, the outpatients team can't join us today, but anything we do learn, we've had a few points and questions and points already fed into us as a group, and we really do appreciate that. We will share with the outpatients team. They're very keen to hear what you have to say. But as I say, the main focus of today's event is to think about how the new virtual world, whether it's meeting your needs from a cancer patient experience side of things. What I'm going to do now is pass you over to learn a little bit about the online etiquette and a little bit about Teams. I'll be learning a lot going forwards as well. So I'll pass you over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice. This is Neil. I'm also a member of the Voice Core Group. Good afternoon, everyone. As Janice said, this is the first time that we're running this type of event as an online session. So a big thank you to you for taking the plunge into these rather uncharted waters for us. However, these may be uncharted waters for you as well in this rather surreal virtual world in which we find ourselves. Now, some of you may have been dragged into the wonderful world of Zoom for communicating by audio and video links with your friends and colleagues via the internet. And Zoom has certainly become the dominant way of doing this for millions of people. An alternative for Zoom is the system we're using today, which is called Teams, as Janice said, and it's very, very similar to Zoom. It's the preferred technology for use by St. George's, and we thank the hospital for hosting this session for us. Now, the technology is designed to focus on the person who should be talking at any given moment. If two or even too many people are trying to talk at the same time, then conversation or presentation can and does get lost. With so many people connected to this session, it's important that we establish some very simple rules of how you interact with this session. Now, if you are on a PC or a laptop or similar, then you should be seeing a set of icons that you can see on your screen at the moment on the presentation page. Now, it's usually found at the bottom of the screen, or it might be at the top right of the screen. And for those of you using things like iPads or whatever, you may need to either nudge the mouse or touch the screen to make it visible. One of these icons is in the shape of a microphone. Oh, it's showing a camera at the moment. Never mind. But one of them, you can see, that's right, it's pointing to the microphone. Now, the first thing we ask is that you keep your microphone turned off, and it's called muting. Now, you can do this simply by clicking on this icon or tapping it on your iPad. You will know when you are muted as a diagonal line will appear across the icon. Please keep it like this unless you're invited to unmute yourself by one of the presenters. Next to the microphone, you can see there's one for your camera or your webcam device. It looks like an old cine camera, and it's shown there on the screen on the left-hand side. Clicking or tapping this icon will have the same effect for the video as for the audio. So with your camera off, no one else can see you, but you continue to see everyone else who has their cameras turned on. Now, if during the question and answer and discussion periods, you wish to comment or ask a question, there are a couple of ways of doing this via the controls that you can see here. One of them is called raising your hand, and the other is by using what's called the chat option. Now, the first one can be done by using the icon with, not surprisingly, the hand showing on it. However, our recommendation is that you make use of the chat function to type in your comment or question, as we may not detect your little hand signal sometimes. Now, if you can't see the chat icon on that list, on that little panel there, you may need to tap on the little three dots, and then you should be given the option to use the chat. So clicking or tapping on that chat icon will open up a separate panel or window on your device. Now, Bruce, who's going to give us a wave, if you can see him, he's in there somewhere. There he is. Bruce will be monitoring this chat line throughout the session to ensure that the questions all get picked up, and he'll have a word to say about this in a moment. If we could move on to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Sorry, my slide's a bit slow.
No worries. Just a few additional things to note. Some of you may know how to take what are called screenshots on your device. If you don't, or you haven't a clue what I'm talking about, then forget this bit. If you do, though, then you're requested not to take any or publish any for personal privacy reasons. Thank you. Now, with many people connected to the same session as we are today, then sometimes the internet connection or the Wi-Fi connection with St. George's can get a bit overloaded. and lead to some links with the folks there breaking up. And Janice mentioned that earlier on. If this does occur, then it may help by turning off your camera to reduce the amount of data going up and down the tube. And I explained that earlier. And for those who are unable to be with us today, we are recording this event. Now, if you do not wish to be heard or seen, or even both, on the recording, then please just turn off your camera as explained earlier. I hope that was reasonably explanatory, and I shall now hand over to Bruce.
Thanks, Neil, for that explanation. Excellent. I'm Bruce Johnston. I'm part of the core group, and I'll be hosting the Q&A session a little bit later in the agenda. Neil mentioned the chat box, the speech bubble on that toolbar to be used for asking questions. Because what I'd like to do is, first of all, for everybody to click on that chat box and use that to introduce themselves. So what you do is you click on the chat box, and then you can type in, "Hi, I'm Jerry," or whatever, and you will see that it'll bring up a column on the right-hand side, which has the sort of the chat, all the chat during the conversation of the meeting. So I've just put in something myself, say, "Hi, I'm Bruce. I'll be hosting the Q&A session later." So just so everybody can get used to that, but also to use that same facility for asking questions as we go along. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to monitor that chat box, and then when we get to the Q&A session itself, I will collate all that together and use that, to start the Q&A session. So please do ask questions as you go along, or if you just want clarification on things, please do. And either we can answer directly to the chat box, or else we'll pick up the questions later in the Q&A session. So as I say, do please just introduce yourselves and then we'll and post those questions, and we'll pick them up later. Thank you very much for your time. I'll hand you back to Estelle.
Hi, thanks Bruce. It's Janice, just going to pick up the next slide. So just to give an overview of the rest of the afternoon, now that we've had the great help from Neil and Bruce, thank you so much, you two, really helpful. So what we're going to do today is we've got the Clinical Director of Cancer, my colleague Dr. Muireann Kelleher, going to join us to speak shortly. It's going to give us a little bit of an overview of what we've experienced in cancer services due to the COVID-19 outbreak, and also a little bit about virtual outpatient services, but very briefly on that. We're then going to, this is where we've got one of our other voice members, Jenny, going to share her cancer patient experience and some of the experiences she's been hearing from our team. And she's going to do a joint session with Caitlin Harvey, who's our Macmillan Leeds DNS for personalised care. And then this is the bit where we really need your help and support in dropping us your questions and your thoughts in the Q&A session as well. Okay, so it's an informal session, the whole experience. So please do jot down any comments as we go along. As Bruce alluded to, he'll collate the questions that are coming through so that we can answer them as the session moves forward. Okay. And anyone that has anything urgent they want to bring up, again, just please, as Neil said, you can raise your hand. And at the end, we will do a summary of what we've learned from today, and also hopefully some of the next steps that myself and Sue, as the chair of Voice, can take forwards to try and improve patient experience for outpatients. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over now to Dr. Muireann Kelleher, who's a clinical, as I alluded to earlier, the Clinical Director for Cancer and a breast oncologist here at St George's. Thank you, Muireann.
Thanks, Janice. Hello, everyone. Can I just check with a wave that that I can be heard, because I'm in the Row Centre, which is pretty appalling Wi-Fi. Right. So apologies if I get cut off. So Janice and I think I'm the one who's pressing all the zeros on the chat as I try and balance my phone against the computer screen. So apologies for that. Janice and Estelle asked me to talk to you and to do a presentation, and I thought I wasn't going to do a presentation, and the reason for that was at a listening event, I think I'm supposed to be listening to you rather than anything didactic and telling you anything. Some of you I've met before, and at Janice and Estelle's Macmillan coffee morning, I know something about some of your habits that perhaps I shouldn't know, who prefers red wine to chocolate cake and everything else. But I wanted to start to talk about the voice community and what it does for patients, and maybe slightly uncomfortably think about what it doesn't do for some patients. And I think voice is a really powerful part of our hospital community. I think it is a space where lots of patients who have had treatment for cancer in St. George's have found a bit of a home. They have found some purpose and a gift from their cancer. I've heard some people describe that they've met a new community of people that they feel they have something unique in common with, and they have found a new way of sharing, you know, their skills. From Neil teaching us all how to use Teams today as a good example. And I refer lots of patients to voice who say to me, particularly towards the end of treatment, I've had a really good experience, but actually I was really frightened at the start of this. I would love to be able to help other people. Other patients come to voice with the idea of, I know what I could have done with at the start of my cancer journey, and I didn't have what I needed. And so I'd like to be part of making changes. And I think for a lot of people in voice, it's quite nice to be part of a group of people where having a past diagnosis of cancer doesn't define you. That's baseline. You have to have that to get into voice. It's part of the entry criteria. So it can be a nice space to have value and purpose and reflect on what you've been through and make it slightly better for the people who are coming. But my one point about voice really kind of touches on diversity and inclusivity. And I think for all that, I'm really delighted that voice exists and it allows a huge amount to happen. I think we have to also reflect that voice should be the voice for the people who don't have the time to advocate for themselves in this way, for the people who perhaps don't have the ability to interact in this way, either face-to-face or on Teams or any other way, and a number of patients who are perhaps not confident to join a group like voice but would also like to be heard. So I would say, as a clinician in this trust, my interaction with voice has been universally fantastic, but I want to hear from you how we think we can include more patients and really hear from all parts of the society that makes up St. George's. So that is my challenge to all of you, that I'd love to hear some ideas on that. I think it's impossible to talk about anything these days without talking about COVID. It has been a unique and largely negative, I feel, impact on cancer services, cancer pathways, but we have had to move really quickly to keep cancer patients safe, but to keep the population safe. We have a real duty to not allow accidental or inadvertent passage of a virus. And I know just how difficult that's been for a lot of the patients I see in clinic and my colleagues, where we had to immediately say, you can no longer come and have a face-to-face appointment unless we feel there is an absolutely valuable reason for that. And also, I think what's been even harder to say to people, you can come to clinic because you need a physical examination, you need a blood test, you need other things, but I'm afraid you have to come alone, and you have to come without anyone to listen with you or hear news for you. And what I have found unique over the last 6 months is a real understanding of how I can communicate with patients and deliver often some really difficult news without that patient being in the room. So we use Teams. We often have patients physically in the room for a consultation, and we have iPads in oncology donated by a patient, where we have a Teams link that we can send to family members, friends of the patient, so the patient can still be in clinic, but they have their virtual person in the room with them. Other things that we found really valuable is seeing a patient face to face, organizing an examination, and then emailing back and forth with the patient to say, look, these are the sorts of treatments I'm thinking of offering you. Here are the links to the websites. These are the information sheets. I'm going to call you with the results of your CT scan on Thursday, and that will help us. And then we set up appointments with the full expectation that that patient is going to get potentially difficult news about a scan, but they're prepared for that. They are at home with their significant others. They know that this is going to be a virtual consultation, but that they will get the news. They can then reflect on the news and come back in and start a treatment plan. So in March, I was horrified at the idea that I would ever break bad news to someone over a telephone or a video screen. But I think there are real situations where that is the right thing to do. But as long as we've given the information to patients, agreed in advance, I would say is the key. And that we are keeping not just patients with cancer safer, but all of the staff and all of the other patients in the trust. So we're going to hear, much more importantly than hearing from me, we're going to hear from people who've had virtual consultations and the good and the bad of it. But I would say that I have been converted to the idea that everything I thought I had to do face to face can be done well with consultation and agreement. It can be done well in a different way. And I've had lots of patients say that they found it easier to be at home with their loved one and have the information that way than be in hospital on their own. So we have to focus that on patients. Chemotherapy and surgery have been a real challenge. Those are two things that we simply can't do remotely yet. And so we have to bring people into hospital to have their surgery on site. And during a pandemic, being intubated for surgery is a really, really frightening thing. And so we've had a lot of times where we have delayed surgery, offered a different sort of treatment instead. But what we're really struggling with as a hospital, and this is across London and I'm sure throughout the country, is in persuading people now of the benefit of having their cancer surgery or their cancer diagnostics and saying the hospital is as safe as it can be. We are taking all of the precautions we can to keep you safe, and we still want you in hospital to have your very important test or to have your surgery. Chemotherapy is a little bit different. That some chemotherapies are life-saving. Some are curative treatments where we would say, actually, we don't want to compromise on any of this treatment. We want to continue on. Some chemotherapies are a little bit more grey in terms of benefit. One group of patients would be patients who are having adjuvant treatment, say for bowel cancer, typically, often breast cancer. You've had your surgery, your oncologist says, look, there's a risk of this cancer coming back. It's roughly 20%. If you have my chemo, the risk of your cancer coming back is going to be roughly 10%. I've made those figures up with no patient in mind. But before the pandemic, a lot of people would say to me, and I've treated people in their 90s adjuvantly, who have said, yeah, I want to improve my chances, I'm going to have the chemotherapy. But as soon as there is an added risk of something quite as frightening as COVID, we found a lot of patients in the spring elected to stop having adjuvant chemotherapy because they said, on balance, that benefit risk of chemo feels less important to me right now. I'd rather stay away from hospital. And there was also some clinicians who sat with patients or spoke to them over Attend Anywhere or Zoom and said, look, I think on balance, the risk to you because of your diabetes or your lung disease, the risk of you being on adjuvant chemo far outweighs the 10% benefit we spoke about in February. So clinically, we think it's a poor choice. And we definitely had some of those consultations, but we were quite pleased in St. George's that we didn't have to stop treatment for anyone who didn't want to stop treatment. And I think it was only with the help of our non-cancer colleagues giving us over some staff, some clinic space. Some of you will be aware we went and squatted in the day surgery unit for a couple of months to deliver chemotherapy there. And so we were very lucky and very well supported across the hospital by colleagues. And I think patients were, by and large, really willing to have those conversations. Conversations none of us wanted to have. The other group of patients are patients with incurable cancer, who have cancer that their treatment is maintaining their quality of life, keeping their cancer suppressed. And for some people, that is a slow cancer that is being treated. We often make the analogy, it's a bit like diabetes. You have to stay on the drugs or the disease will cause you harm. But if you stay on the drugs and we control the disease, then this is great. In large parts of the north of England, patients had to stop palliative chemotherapy in April and May. And again, there were small pockets of that happening in London. And again, we were delighted not to have to do that. There was a hairy time in April where we thought we were going to need to have to stop palliative chemo for some people who didn't want to stop it. And I think we have got our ducks in a row in that regard, that we're, unless things go very, very badly wrong as a nation, I think we are fairly secure against that. We are well networked in southwest London, and we have lots of agreements now with other hospitals. And so occasionally, like we had to do with surgery, we had to say, you are a St. George's patient, but you're actually having your colorectal surgery in the Cromwell Hospital this week, because that's the safest empty clean theatre this week. And we did that for a lot of patients. Some breast operations were done in the Royal Marsden in Sutton, so George's surgeons were operating. They were highly promiscuous, and they were operating anywhere where there was an anaesthetist and a clean theatre. And we might have to do that with chemotherapy this winter. We may reach a point where we say, absolutely, we're continuing your treatment, but this week, I'm afraid, hospital transport is taking you to Kingston Hospital. And, a cycle later, there might be another group of patients that we say, you have to have your chemo for the next 2 cycles in the Royal Marsden. But we are doing everything we can to have all of the background IT and nursing cover and medical cover set up for that. I'm conscious I've been talking a long time. I just want to say one thing beyond COVID is some of the good things we've learned from COVID, we will continue. Some of the cutting out of unnecessary trips to hospital. The Evening Standard, that great organ of definite information, did a piece 2 years ago that said 10% of Monday to Friday car journeys inside the M25 are related to healthcare appointments. And that is a huge amount of traffic, stress and anxiety. And I think I would count myself amongst the agnostics before this, where I was trying to set up a virtual clinic for a very, very small focus group of patients. And now I feel that within what is reasonable for a patient and what they feel digitally is good for them, that I am now going to start having a kind of packages of follow-up that are individualized to the patients, saying, right, you're going to get these results by telephone call. Are you comfortable with that? You don't need to come to hospital for your next review. We're going to do it over a video call, or we're going to do it over a telephone call. And I think that's what we will be doing from next spring onwards, is looking at the way that we don't take a step back to what life was like in February 2020, that we take what we had to learn rather too quickly and we improve cancer care post-COVID. And so that we strip out what we don't need to do, but we don't lose the central core of what we want, which is patients with cancer in St. George's knowing that they belong in St. George's, knowing who their people are, and knowing how to get really good care when they need it in the way that suits them. So thank you for listening to me. That's it for me. And Janice, whichever way you want, I'm happy to take questions now or later. You're the boss of me as always, Janice.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone does want to ask any Muireann Kelleher any questions. We can take some questions now if people want to. Otherwise, we can move on to the next session. I'll just see if any questions come through quickly. If not, we can move on to the next session and have further questions at the end. So if you've got any questions, if you just jot them on the chat bar. Positive feedback for you, Muireann, but I haven't seen any questions come through yet. So what we'll do is we'll move on to Jennifer Wainman, Jenny, to us, who's the Voice Core Group member, and also Caitlin Harvey, who's the Macmillan Lead CNS for Personalised Care, who's joined us recently, and she's a great credit added on benefit to our team here at St George's. I have to say, we're really lucky to have Caitlin. So I'll just pass you over. Jenny, are you happy to come in now?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep, we can.
Lovely. I'll just share my slide with you. There we go. Okay.
Jenny,
Yeah.
you don't have to. Can you stop your presentation, please?
Okay, can everybody see the slide? I'm Jenny, and I think a number of the areas that I'm going to speak about now have sort of been covered by Muireann, so that's really good. I've been a patient voice core group member for about a year and a half, and I'm going to share in part the experiences of 4 core group members, including myself, who are all cancer patients at St George's, both new and long-standing. And although today we are meeting to focus and discuss the cancer patient experience, we are aware that some of you may also have other patient experiences due to other health conditions. We want to say as well that the NHS is amazing, and acknowledge the complex system of care and administration that takes place before, during and after consultation. And it's something as patients we can at times be wholly unaware of. Over the last 7 months, we as patients have all had experiences of appointments being postponed, reviews being extended, and long delays, sometimes with no notification or consultation. And we've all had our concerns and worries about these difficult times. And we fully appreciate that as the pandemic dissipates, the backlog is now being cleared, and it's beginning to feel like things are getting back on track. New systems and ways of working have emerged too, hence this discussion. Having access to emotional support as well during the initial stages of diagnosis and treatment is vital, and there have been times where they're in abundance and other times sadly unavailable. And obviously Macmillan and the Rose Centre have worked hard to provide online wellbeing provision, but again it has been a new and sometimes difficult journey. Between us, we've had numerous differing communications from the hospital, i.e. letter, text, phone call and verbal. For example, as some of you might have experienced as well, 2 weeks during March and April, I had daily text alerts from gov.uk and NHS coronavirus alerts, which heightened my awareness and were informative, giving the impression of urgency and the need to take care. But when this stopped, there were no guides to other services or explanation. It just stopped. And this was quite confusing and worrying at the time. However, we've all adapted over this time, and who would have thought that phone call consultation would become the norm? Talking over the phone about lumps, bumps and personal bits with someone you don't know or have never met can be very difficult. But on the whole, we have found these calls and consultations helpful if you already knew your consultant, your cancer nurse specialist, or some of the admin staff, consultant secretaries, etc. And you knew a little bit about the process. So again, sort of how have these calls worked for you? Waiting for the call can be the difficult bit, particularly if it's not at the time stated. As one member put it, if you are in a waiting room in the hospital, then a nurse will come and let you know that the clinic is running late. In a phone consultation, waiting at home, there is no call made to let you know of the delay. Also, there have been times when calls have been made by clinicians days earlier to get through their backlog. The patient member was unaware that this was going to happen and was taken by surprise and therefore unprepared and did not have the questions and requests for information at hand. Is this your experience, or have you felt encouraged and able to discuss? One core group member spoke of requesting with a clinician whom they had met previously, although this possibility was not known by most core group members. So again, a sort of differing information drifting through. Another core group member received a verbal confirmation of an appointment day, date and time. However, this was then followed by a text with differing details, i.e. a different day, date and time. After they themselves called to check this out, it was confirmed that the text was a mistake and the first details were correct. After all this confusion, the procedure successfully went ahead on the first date. Sometimes medication and prescribing after initial diagnosis and treatment plan is then continued or completed through the GP. Communication is critical, as one member experienced a clinic letter taking 6 weeks to arrive at the GP's surgery, and she was left worrying about treatment and her health during that time. As an outpatient attending clinics, there have been temporary and permanent changes to clinic locations during the last few months, with little information forwarded about this, often with individual reception staff being unaware of the new location either. Checking in at main reception has helped some of us to find the location of the appointment clinic, and this has saved time and worry. Checking whether this change is permanent is useful too. Patient core group member or not, we have all experienced numerous changes in COVID procedures and measures over the last 7 months. The staff and hospital, I think, having probably the most difficult of times. For core group members attending appointments during the pandemic, there was the mask or no mask question. Where and when do we use hand gel? How to stay 2 meters apart? Who should be doing what and where? And we have all acknowledged the changes with messaging across the hospital being clear and signposting more visible. These are just a few of the experiences of core group members. Has this been your experience? And are you clear about the procedures to follow when visiting the hospital? And finally, just perhaps some of what we've shared has been your experience too, or your experience may have been completely different. So let us know. And how can we help St George's to improve? That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, I've swapped places with Janice. My name is Hayden Harvey. I'm the new personalised care lead here at Lead CNS here at St George's, and I just wanted to introduce the next section and kind of reset and kind of repeat some of the things that Janice said earlier about what we're looking for and information we really want from you. So I think firstly, I'd like to kind of acknowledge that there have been lots of challenges around outpatient appointments here in the trust, and they are working on that, and there is a plan in place to improve those things. And anything you do tell us about those issues, like appointments, text messages, we'll take back to the outpatient team, and they're really engaged with learning and moving forward. There's been lots of changes. But I think what we as a council team are really interested in is the conversations you've had during those appointments, what it's like to have a conversation with a clinician wearing a mask, using social distancing, whether a phone appointment has met your needs, whether that communication is more challenging or whether it's more positive and actually you found it much easier because it's interrupted your schedule less, you haven't sat in an outpatient department for hours when actually you've been able to sit in the comfort of your own home. Is that beneficial to you? And we want to have some kind of useful learning through that. So I think what we're going to, the floor is yours on that information and whether there's anything useful there. Thanks.
Hi, looks like my mug shot has come up on the screen, so it must be my turn. Apologies for that mug shot, but anyway, it was all I had to hand, so apologies for that. As mentioned earlier, I was going to sort of monitor for questions and issues raised. We haven't been flooded with questions, I think it's fair to say, I have had a couple of interesting points that Liz has made, but one thing I'd like to do and to get people to participate is for everyone on this call who's been an outpatient to use the chat box and give a rating between 1 and 10, 1 being very poor, 10 being excellent, for the experience you've had as an outpatient during the pandemic. So if you could just put that in the chat box. And I'll do one myself, just to so that I'm not to prove that that you know, I'm not exempting myself. But I would appreciate if people would say what the score is, but also if there's one thing that you think could be done to improve the experience. So it's not necessarily the having a good or a bad experience. There are obviously advantages to the fact that you know, that you have remote consultations. I started low because everyone's a higher score than I have, so things are obviously going relatively well. But if you can think of one thing that would actually make the experience better than what we have at the moment. I know that Liz has mentioned about the use of video rather than audio, and that's, I think, something that people are working. Liz, do you want to just sort of say a quick word about that and why you think that the video would be a more effective experience?
Hi there. Yeah. Well, you know, I kind of have quite a relationship with the oncologist. I've been doing this now for, you know, twice round for the last 7 or 8 years now, and kind of these people have been kind of quite important in your lives. And it's kind of, first of all, I found it weird that I didn't know what I was meant to do. I didn't get any text reminders. I didn't know whether my appointment was actually happening or not, whether I'd been forgotten. And then the oncologist called 2 hours early out of the blue when I was actually doing something completely different, hadn't really got my acting degree and was with other people, and I had to sort of duck out quickly. So that was a bit discombobulating. But, you know, I like my oncologist. We have a relationship, and I just think Zoom is not quite as great as being there, but it's better than just audio. And I think it's just more difficult. It's more difficult to ask a question. You know, I kind of was umming and ahhing because I was caught in the hop, and I kind of, at the very end, I sort of said, oh, so what do you think my prognosis is? And then that was kind of a really difficult question to ask. She goes, oh, I really don't know, you know. But because I'm in that limbo land of it having come back and having done it all twice and being told it will definitely come back, but just hanging on and doing 3 months checks. And so I don't know, it's I feel I'm part of the St George's family, and video is a bit warmer. I don't know, that's kind of what I'm...
Well, I certainly appreciate that myself, Liz, and the fact you can actually read people obviously better on video, and the hooks, and especially if there's going to be some bad news imparted as well. That is very difficult for the clinician to do, I guess, remotely. Janice and Caitlin, maybe it's a question to you, because I think it has been discussed, hasn't it, the use of video, or am I imagining things?
Sorry, we're on mute. Video appointments.
Yes. We're going to use them. We're hoping to get in software Attend Anywhere. I think they have started in certain clinics on a trial basis, but the idea is if it works well and it's the right system, I guess, after the trial, that's something we're quite keen to roll out. So yeah, that will be coming along, because I do think, I agree, it makes it much more personable, doesn't it, when you can see the person you're talking to at the other end of the phone, so or the other end of the consultation.
Yeah, and can I make one other, this is a terrible, I'm sorry, this is a shameless plug, but one of the other things about people not actually coming in is they don't get to see any information about the other sports services around. And I'm vice chair of Paul's Cancer Service. Sorry, here's a plug, but they're really struggling to get patients. They've got all these wonderful online services, and now some of them in person, and we're just not getting the referrals because people are not coming in, they're not seeing flyers, leaflets. So I really beg the care teams, you know, and the oncologists, if we could just pass the word around that, you know, these services are there. you know, they're really out there, they really want to help, they've got great services, but we're just not getting the clients. And if we don't get the clients, we can't ask for the money. And so, you know, really need to keep up the client flow. So
really appreciate, yeah. Oh, sorry, go on, Liz, sorry.
No, that's it really. It was a plug, but I'm sorry to do a shameless plug, but you know, we are kind of linked.
And no, we do appreciate that, Liz, and I know that the Midland Information Centre, we are open, we are online, as well as being open for visits, so I do agree with you. Can we maybe talk to some of the people, Bruce, that have had some quite good consultations to know what's working so well for them to help with the learning?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I mean, Nikki, you've just posted a comment about the great communication with your CNS. Do you want to just sort of illuminate on that? Nikki?
Yeah, sorry, just needed to unmute. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I just think, I mean, I've had all face-to-face consultations through the whole of lockdown. I had, unfortunately, my cancer returned quite badly. I was really unwell. Dr. Fusey, who I'm under, I've been into the hospital all the time via Hoop Clinic, and he was just amazing. And I had a very surreptitious email from Sheila, who's a support worker, when I was due some scan results in April. So right in April, right at the height of everything being awful, and she just sent me an email saying, "Oh, we've just to let you know, we're letting partners in to have scan results." And you know, alarm bells are ringing because I felt unwell anyway. And he was allowed to come with me to get, you know, really rubbish news. Thankfully, new treatment is working at the moment, so I'm actually doing okay. But I think for me, the most important thing is to have that relationship with your CNS and to make sure that you can. I mean, I email Carol on a fairly regular basis. I'd had a lymphedema appointment, which was over the phone, the most ridiculous thing you could possibly imagine. You know, a lymphedema appointment. How are they going to look at my leg if on the phone? But anyway, and then the next day I was in the melanoma clinic having a full body check, actually in the clinic. So but all of the fact that all of the oncology appointments have carried on, I've seen people face to face all the way through. It's just been fantastic. And just double checking with my CNS, I drop her an email going, "Oh, I've got an appointment, is it just at this time?" Or Carol phones me, you know, the week before and says, just to check you're okay for your appointment, it's at this time. I mean, I had a ridiculous appointment time of something like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and she went, "Oh, that's no good, we need your bloods done sooner than that." And so she'd go, "Oh, come about 9 o'clock-ish." I mean, it's just, for me, that is the most important thing, is to make sure you've got that amazing rapport and be able to communicate with your CNS. I guess, I don't know what other CNSs across the hospital are like, but Carol is amazing, so.
Oh, I know she is, Nikki. It's a joy to work with. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
I'll pass back to you, Bruce. But thanks, Nikki. That's really great.
Okay, thank you.
And also to pick up on some of the points that have been brought up by people who posted comments prior to the meeting. So one thing which is actually a recurring theme, it seems, or something which touches my own experience, is the experience with the text reminders being somewhat disjointed and actually misleading information. So, for instance, being told to attend an appointment, then told not to attend an appointment, and also appointments, I guess, being not at the time that that the original face-to-face appointment was. It can be like a couple of hours out or whatever. I think that's something which should, I guess, be fixable, but it involves a lot of planning, and also because one of the comments was that it had been raised at PPEG, and I think somebody had suggested that, you know, this is being fixed, but I don't think it's an overnight fix. Janice, I mean, from your perspective, or Maureen, from your perspective, how easy it is to do that when you're scheduling a whole load of appointments, and actually to get the support systems right so that the texting is correct, and also to actually land it on target as well. It seems to me that it's something which should be fixable, but I would appreciate why, you know, it's not something which could happen overnight. Janice, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think a bit out of my remit because it sort of fits with corporate outpatient rather than cancer nursing, but I do know that the organisation is aware of it. Obviously, because it's all quite quick what we've done, a lot of the templates that are built are mixed. So some patients are coming for face-to-face, some people are having telephone appointments in the one clinic template. So it's not, the system that we use isn't good enough to identify or, you know, technically advanced enough, I don't know if they are, even if they're out there, to actually pick up that specifics at the moment. So we are working on it as an organisation about how we can get that right. So it's very much on the agenda. As Outpatient said to us before the event, when because we were talking to them about it, and they said they've done their 5-year strategy in sort of 3-4 months.
And they're going back to try and find the fixes.
So we're trying to now find the fixes. So we've moved quickly into the virtual world, but now we're going to try and do the fixes, like we're saying, around the text reminders and things like that. So.
Okay. And another common thread seems to be about familiarity with your CNS or whatever. So if you're dealing with somebody you know, that's, especially if you have like a remote appointment, I think that's easier because you have that sort of that friendliness or that familiarity makes it an easier conversation than if you're suddenly going to have a conversation with somebody who you're not who, you know, speaking to for the first time, because obviously again you can't read the body language, etc. So it can be, if you're having a remote appointment, I think that does make a difference whether you're dealing with people you know well enough and who know you well enough to dealing with somebody. This is almost like a cold calling scenario for them from the clinic, from the clinician point of view. So I think that's something when maybe that's again where the video may help in terms of breaking down those barriers, and even just the start of the conversation is quite important, isn't it? Because when you have to get to the in a sense, the main part of the conversation where you've been given a diagnosis or whatever, but just that initial sort of lead into the conversation is quite critical as well. So I think the familiarity aspect is something which it seems to be a common thread as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, just thinking about maybe for people that have come in for their appointments, how are they feeling coming into the organisation? Any both good and bad? Anyone how they actually feel? So we know things weren't 100% right, but we are open up much more about face-to-face appointments. So or if you haven't come into the organisation, how would you feel if you did need to come into the organisation? Because one of the things we're quite keen to work on in cancer services is to, especially for new patients, how do they feel about coming into St George's? They don't, you know, so we're encouraging people to come back in for their tests and things. Has anyone got any thoughts on that? They want to either come in via either the chat or if they want to talk.
Oh, I might just ask Agatha, because Agatha gave a 10 out of 10 for the Marsden for a couple of visits. So I'm just wondering what you know, what's the Marsden doing so well? So she hasn't been to St George's, so she's not doing a comparative mark. But or maybe people can just put in the chat box whether they are happy to come on site at St George's. I mean, personally, I've been to St George's a few times, and you know, and I haven't had any issues. But I appreciate why people with certain conditions may not be as happy to do so. But Agatha, are you on the call? Are you on mute? All right. Okay. Well, I don't know if you read what Agatha put, but she did say that she had an excellent.
Hello. Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Agatha.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Bruce, your question was experiences in St. George's. That's why I gave you that reply, because I have never attended St. George's since my cancer operation, which was excellent. So I was referred to Royal Marsden after my operation, and I've been going to Royal Marsden before the pandemic and after, and then up till now. I've attended twice, and they've been wonderful. They never cancelled any of my appointments. They sent me a text, they called me on the phone, and they told me what to do when I arrived. When I was on total lockdown, because I was shielded, they spoke to me on the phone. So what they told me was that if I'm able to travel, they will accept me at the hospital. But if I'm not able to, they will check my record to see whether I needed to come in for the blood test, because they wanted to regulate my medication that I'm taking for my cancer operation. So that's exactly what they did. So I spoke to them on the phone, and the first blood test, I went to my GP, which they communicated with them, and they changed my medication. After that, I had the shielding was eased, and I was able to travel by taxi to Royal Marsden, and they accepted me very well. They coming in where they will give you a new face mask, your sanitizer. You come in, and the lady there will take you straight to the outpatients department, and with all the everything that they do in the hospital was wonderful. The consultant saw you within 20 minutes, and they sent me to scan. I went for my scan. There was only 2 nurses there. I was there within 10 minutes. They've done my scan, and I went back to the consultant, and the whole experience was wonderful. And I don't know what the position is in St. George's. That is why I said I gave you 10 for Royal Marsden. Up till now, I've been getting cancellations on all my appointments in endocrinology, and they are the ones that sent me for the operation. I have had 4 cancellations from that department up till now. I got one only yesterday, and this was Thursday, April 2021. They've cancelled that again from St. George's. So I've never gone back to St. George's since my operation, which I found very strange.
Well, thank you, Agatha. I mean, I think you could certainly be a cheerleader for Marsden's, but I think there's probably the appointments do tend to move around a little. I mean, I'm aware of the fact we were actually now in a comfort break time, so I'll just mention that of the comments coming in, the people who've actually put comments in the chat box are happy enough to come in to on site, but I don't know if the people who haven't made any chat comments, whether that infers that they're not as happy to come on site. I couldn't actually say, but Agatha, thanks for that. I think we'll take the 10-minute comfort break. I'll just hand back to Janice first, just in case there's anything she wants to add. The idea being that we'd have like a 10-minute comfort break, and then we'd go on to the next steps and moving forward. But Janice, do you just want to say a couple of things as we go into that comfort break?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And while you were all talking, we're also looking at the comments coming through, so it's really helpful. Thank you. If you want to carry on putting the comments through during the comfort break, that would be really appreciated. Honestly, anything that you say is completely, if it's not under my remit, I will pass it on to the people's remit that it does come under. So any good and not so good, not too negative, no, I'm only joking. Any comments at all would be really, really helpful. To carry on posting them during the comfort break. Things that do come up, we will pick them up when we come back after the comfort break, as well as summarising what we've learned so far. But we will pick up some of the key points that come up through the chat bar. All right, so I'll leave you to go and make yourselves a quick cup of tea, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so just after 22. Oh, excuse me.
people back on the call? Have we been about 10 minutes? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've been around 10 minutes now. You've had time for a quick cuppa. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we've come back now to talk a little bit about the summary and our actions, but I would just like to use a bit more of your brain power that's really helpful for me and how to model our services going forward and your knowledge and experience. If you were bringing yourself back to when you were first diagnosed with your cancer, if you were diagnosed now in this current times in the middle of the pandemic, what would be helpful for you to have that would be that you may not do? So you may obviously have this information over the phone with someone you don't know that well, or it may be your first time in the organisation, but because we're limiting how many people you're meeting, you may not there and then meet your CNS, etc. What do you think? Is there anything that anyone thinks that may be really helpful for those that are being diagnosed with cancer in this time? Also, I do pick up on what Liz was saying about the information that we give people as well, but I'll be really helpful just over the next couple of minutes while we're talking, if you just think about that, and that'd be really helpful. Thank you. I'm going to pass you over to Sue, the Chair of Voice, so that she can summarise what we've learned so far.
Thanks, Janice. Yeah, I just want to cover a few points that we've taken as top line issues with you. And please feel free if you think we've missed anything. Again, use the chat line, email us any way you like, or just butt in now, we don't mind. I think we've all seemed to hear that the video calls work very well. And they work really well when you already know your clinicians or your CNS or your consultant. So that's quite a big learning, but we are very worried about people who are new patients, who haven't met their clinicians and don't know any faces. So we want to look at that, certainly, and we will be trying to talk to some new patients. It's also very clear that the CNSs are key to how you feel when you're out on your own at the end of a line, whether it's video or a telephone line. So that's a big learning and something that we've always valued the CNSs hugely, but maybe we need to get that message back to all of them, not just our starred few. And I think that I'm not going to touch on the tech system because it's a technology
Sue, can
thing.
I just interrupt with the CNS point, Sue?
Yeah, sure.
With that as well, I think it's really helpful for me because obviously during the peak of the pandemic, some of the cancer CNSs were redeployed to the intensive care unit and other areas. And I think the learning for me and the take-home message for me is that people still need the support of their cancer nurse specialist, even if they're not seeing them face-to-face in clinic. And that's really helpful for me. So thank you very much. But I'll pass you back over to Sue. Thanks, Sue.
Well, good point. We mustn't forget where we're coming from here. So we're not going to even talk about the tech system at the moment because it's an IT issue. It's out of our remit. We can't promise you anything. So let's just all hope for the best there. On the support services, apart from the CNSs, there are lots of support services in the hospital. Not only Macmillan Centre, which is open, and Estella's done a wonderful job of rearranging and reformatting a lot of the information and putting things onto YouTube. But one of the sadnesses is that if you're not coming into hospital, you're perhaps not aware of what's going on. You're not seeing our posters, you're not picking up leaflets, and you're not even sitting in a clinic and talking to other patients. So for us, that's quite a learning item there, and we will be trying to address that. One of the things I felt we could do is look at the information that goes out to patients before the appointment, whether it's online or on the phone or in person. Options have changed, and I think that in future it would be nice if every letter that goes out, hopefully you get it in time, would have on the back of the letter the new arrangements, just to clarify it. What is happening now? What are your options? so that every patient is aware of that. And it's not just us old timers that have learnt the rules. So I think going forward, our main points will be looking at new patients, because it's been great to hear from your experienced patients, but you've highlighted the problems that could occur with the new patients. And thank you very much for that. But then we will also be looking at the information that goes out and looking at how we can make people more aware of the support services, whether it's Paul's on Lizzie's account or the Macmillan information, the CAN chat line, any of the support services that are there in the hospital. It's been very helpful for us this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. I'm going to hand you back to Janice now, and I hope that we can do this again sometime and eventually have tea and cake. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Sue, really appreciated. Just to say, so in summary from where to summarise the event, so there's just a couple of points from me. Just to say, we are going to send you out an evaluation from today. I hope it has been helpful to you, but this is a learning point for Voice Group and for us in Cancer Services. As I say, this is the first time we've done an event like this. I do miss seeing you all in the room, I have to say. There's nothing quite like seeing people face to face, but it's still great hearing the experiences and your feedback. So we are going to send out an evaluation. So if you do have time to just fill that in, that would really be helpful, because we would like to do further events, and it hopefully will get better and better as they go forwards. Also, hopefully you're seeing one of the things that I'm quite proud of is that Voice and myself as and Estelle from the Information Centre, we have a co-meeting, and Voice is really a massive part of my role as a lead cancer nurse, because I wouldn't be here and be able to make the differences that I can around patient experience without the input from Voice. So I do encourage those of you that aren't members of Voice to think about signing up, or also if you do hear from friends and family or people down the street that you know that may be interested, you let them get in touch with Estelle, or it's on our website, because we are always keen for new members. You don't necessarily have to be part of the core group, but it would be really great if you be even just on our database to get some of the information that we do circulate around our events and things. I can see that Dr. Kelleher's got her hand up there, so I don't know if she wants to come in now. Muireann, come in.
Sure, Janice. Just one of the things I wanted to say about the video calls is we're limited by the bandwidth in the hospital of how many video calls can run from the hospital setting. And when people are working from home, we can all do kind of unlimited attend anywhere consultations. And just one of the things I wanted to mention about the short notice change between what the phone call versus coming into the hospital expectation is I think we don't always tell patients or their relatives that sometimes doctors or CNSs have to self-isolate. They've had COVID, they have COVID, or they've got affected children. And so sometimes there is a short notice change, because actually the only way that the consultation can safely happen with a self-isolating or affected doctor is that person is doing it from home. And just a personal reflection on I had 2 weeks of isolation when my son had COVID in August, and that's when I started doing a lot of video calls. One of the things I found quite fun actually about it is barriers are a little different when neither the patient nor the doctor is in a hospital setting, and we're both sitting in our own homes. And I had a consultation where a patient signed off by saying, "Love you, bye." And I heard myself saying, "Love you," before I realized, my goodness me, this is the most inappropriate thing that has ever happened. So you know, it is an exaggeration of what happens a lot, that the barriers are very different between a hospital setting and two people talking to each other from their homes. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but I would agree with you all that if we have to have a virtual first consultation, we all prefer that to be video. And then finally, I've had a patient absolutely get apoplectic with me that it was a video call because she was in her pajamas, and said, my goodness me, I thought this was a telephone call. I didn't even realize my screen had accepted it. She thought her phone was accepting a telephone consultation. So for all that, sometimes it does cheer me up that we can have quite a giggle about things. There are new ways to trip up and make mistakes that I think we're all learning with.
Oh, thank you so much, Muireann. Really appreciated. So I think unless anyone's got anything they would like to say, so I'll just give a couple of minutes for people to just, if they want to say anything going forward, then I'll be drawing us to a close. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to see if you've got any outstanding questions you'd like to ask myself, to Chair of Voice Estelle, the Macmillan Information Centre Manager. We've also got Caitlin still in the room, and also oh, I've missed someone's name, I'm sure I had in my head. But anyway, any of us, a quick question. Time now just to jot them down, or just to put your hand up and ask, and I can see someone's hands up there. Eldred, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you very much, all of you, to start with. Like Nikki, I'm a melanoma sufferer. And I have to say the team, the melanoma team from Professor Dalglish downwards were absolutely superb. Communication, excellent. It's all by email or by telephone. And it's a lot of it is sorting out the appointment problems. I don't know what's happened to the appointment system in the hospital, but you can get 3 letters in different days giving you different appointments. You can have an appointment given you for a CT scan at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you can have an MRI one at 7 p.m. in the evening. If you've got an hour's journey into the hospital and an hour's journey home, plus the car park, that makes problems. So there's a confidence issue with the appointment system. I don't know how it's going to be resolved, but there's a confidence issue that needs to be looked at. There's a couple of other things that I would raise. And first of all, I'd raise about the confidence of actually walking into the hospital for one of your consultations. When I was absolutely staggered to walk into St. George's, on one morning, there was no sanitization there. There was nobody to ask who I was. So the gating procedure, what I would term as a gating procedure as an engineer, which looked at sanitizing, check, trace, who are you, where are you going, etc., just didn't exist. It's appalling. There wasn't anything. Now there's somebody sitting behind a desk, giving you a mask if you need to, and offering you the sanitizing. I was absolutely staggered in compared with some other hospitals I've got to know. And I think one of the issues that you should consider is that many people don't want to come into the hospital because we're all trying to isolate ourselves from any risk. So I was particularly concerned with that. And I was also concerned, I hate to say this, with the cleanliness of the hospital. I walked in one morning, go to the toilet. Unfortunately, the toilet was filthy. And another morning I came in for a scan, towel bins overflowing. That just was, this is St. George's. This is a British hospital. I'm not sitting on one of the Pacific Islands. It was absolutely, I think the management of the hospital needs a good, and I was so annoyed by it all. I wrote and formed a complaint, but when talking to the people in the complaints department, it seemed that, oh, just another one, we'll look at it. I mean, this is cleanliness, and this is a gating procedure in a hospital in the middle of a pandemic. And I really think that I'd like to see a board member who's probably responsible for, I don't know how you call it in a hospital, but the maintenance and the cleanliness of the hospital, operations management, probably taking a walk around the hospital first thing in the morning. So I've written some of my notes down. I think I'm going to say, so full marks for everybody I met in a Thomas Howe unit, They were all doing the correct thing. They took your temperature before you got in, discussed whether you've been in contact with anybody. Very good indeed. Entrance to the hospital, no. And that puts not just me at risk, or you who are talking on the other end of this voice, but it puts all the staff at risk as well. And you want to know the staff are free from COVID or tested regularly. So I felt, you know, that the staff really were being put at risk within their own hospital. I can say that it was wonderful to see the staff car park, the staff allowed to park in the car park. That gives you the thoughts that, great, they're not travelling with public transport. But it also raises a question, of course, is the hospital trying to raise money by getting other people in to pay the fees when the visitors aren't there? I'll leave that with the hospital. But they're my concerns, and I would expect that some of them in the hospital would take some note and interest. But it staggers me. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting conversation this afternoon. And I agree with Nikki Horton, who I can see on the screen, that the melanoma team are absolutely superb. Carol, it couldn't be better. Thank you very much, Sue. That's my lot.
Oh, thank you, Eldred. That's really helpful. I'm sorry you've had to experience that. It's not anything that I think anyone here at St George's would want to hear. So I do appreciate that feedback, and I will link in with the appropriate teams as well. All I can say is please don't think that anyone in the complaints team takes these things as just another complaint, because we really do investigate them. And however frustrating it is, if people do see things like this, please do feed it in so that we can make things better, because we certainly don't want anyone to experience what you experienced when you came to St George's. So thanks, Eldred, I really do appreciate that. I think we're just coming to the time of the end of the event. I will be reading all of the chat comments, and I know Sue will as well. And we do plan to feed back to you all in the coming months about what we've learned, and also about what actions we have taken to go forwards. And our next voice meeting will be really interesting and exciting event to look at all those comments, because we will as a group, and we will set up our actions that we want to take forward. I know Sue's touched on a few of those. I just want to say a couple of thank yous before we sign off. In particular, I'd like to thank the Voice Core Group. We wouldn't have been able to do this event without you, so thank you very much. Really appreciated. I think Neil, you did great on showing us all how to use Teams. Bruce for facilitating the question and answer session. Jenny for sharing your experiences, and Sue for chairing Voice and co-chairing this event with me. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Dr. Muireann Kelleher for giving up her time. She's a fantastic colleague, and I really do appreciate her joining this call. And I know she will also work with me on taking forward some of the learning we have heard from you. And my final thank you goes to Caitlin, lead CNS for personalised care. I really appreciate her facilitating the discussion. And for Estelle, the Macmillan Information Centre Manager. I think most of you do know Estelle, and we certainly wouldn't get any of these things done with anything done at all, actually, without Estelle. So I just wanted to thank her. And finally, thank you all for giving up your time. I really do appreciate it, and we do really listen to what you have to say, and hope we can make some changes and some improvements going forward. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to stop recording now, and we'll sign off. So unless Sue wants to say anything else, I think that's the thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye everyone.